Hi guys, my name is Kirsty and welcome back to Upside Down Books. Today we're going to be doing my July TBR.
Non più tra I farfalloni amoroso, notte giorno di torno.
So, if you're new here, I have finally made like a how-to video on how my TBR jar system works. So you can head along to the video linked up above and have a read of that if you want to know how the structures work, because I have 6 TBR jars. But for everyone else who's familiar with the system, let's get to it. I'm really excited and I'm going to stick with the same sort of structure that I was picking from last time, where I picked the double from my backlist, and I was so pleased with the TBR that I got in June. That was fantastic. So I have expectations set really high and I'm like really hopeful that it's going to be epic and I'm going to get through it. Now once again I'm going into another month knowing that I have a lot of other reading that I'm going to need to do aside from this TBR, so I'm not actually holding out too much hope that I'm going to get through everything I pick out today, because I have a lot of review copies that have come my way, as you will see in my June book haul coming soon. So I'm currently dancing the fine line between reading my books and reading review copies and trying to work out that chaos. But I'm having fun, I'm reading great books, so in all honesty, I'm not that mad about it. So I think we should go ahead, start the picking, have fun, hope for the best, and then wish me all the best of luck going into July that I get some of these read. I think that sounds like a great idea. So that brings me to the first jar. So this is my presents jar, I think. I can't get over how like small and slim pickings the presents TBR jar works. I like to think that that's a good sign that I'm getting through them, but it's a little unsettling. Okay, at this point I'm thinking I want to pick out like a Christmas book from last year so that my TBR in December will be smaller. Oh, how exciting. Okay, I have picked out Malice, which is from my birthday just gone. So not a Christmas book. Naturally, I shouldn't have said anything, it was listening to me. So this is Malice. It is by Heather Walter. It's a Sleeping Beauty retelling and I am like super excited to dive into this one. I actually don't feel like I've heard too many people talking about this book, so I feel like I'll be going into this with relatively fresh eyes. I feel like I've been reading a lot of like really new releases lately, because this is a new 2021 release, so I am looking forward to this. So this is the opening line to the blurb. Once upon a time there was a wicked fairy who cursed a line of princesses to die, a curse that could only be broken by true love's kiss. Utter nonsense. So I believe this is told from the villain's perspective and I think it's going to be really fun. I'm hoping for some sarcasm and just general badassery in this book, so we will see what is held within its pages. Okay, so the next jar we're going to be picking from is this one. I can't remember which one it is. I think this might be my diversity jar. This is my diversity jar. Let's see what diversity book is in here. Once again, if you don't know what my jars are and what I mean by diversity and what is in here, then please go and watch that video where I will give you a full explanation about what this is. This is such an exciting jar. There's so many things in here. Okay, not terribly excited about that one, purely because I know that there are so many other exciting things in there, but that's okay because I picked out the Kabul Beauty School. So the Kabul Beauty School is by an author called Deborah Rodriguez, who I actually really like, and I have been meaning to read this for a long time. This is in my diversity jar because I believe it's set in Afghanistan. I'm pretty sure Kabul is the Afghan capital. Oh god, I hope I'm right saying that. So this is the Kabul Beauty School. It is a relatively short book and I will read you the blurb. It is from the perspective of 4 characters. I have read the book that came before this, which was called The Little Coffee Shop of Kabul, and that was phenomenal. Earlier this year I read her latest book, which is called The Moroccan Daughter, and I just love her writing and I usually fly through it, so that really does bode well for getting this read in a reasonable amount of time. So Deborah Rodriguez has lived in many different places, I believe, a lot of Middle Eastern, North African countries, so she has some really cool stories and that really shows in her story itself. Anyway, onto the blurb. In a little beauty school in the war zone of Kabul, a community of women comes together, all with stories to tell. So we have Debbie, Mina, Roshana, and Nahida. In the Kabul Beauty School, these women and many others find a safe haven and the seeds of their future independence. So all of these women have different perspectives. Debbie is an American hairdresser, Roshana is a young bride who's terrified of her in-laws, Mina has been forced to marry somebody, and Nahida is a prize pupil. So I am looking forward to diving into this one. I'm finally picking it up because this has been on my TBR for a very long time. So this is my ARCs jar. So this is like my backlist of review copies because all the new ones coming in I'm trying to actually read on time. So my backlist, let's see what I pick from it. I always feel like this is the book I never end up getting to, so let's try not to carry that on. Okay, I'm pretty sure I've pulled this one out before and I'm a little bit apprehensive about reading it because I feel like it's going to be a slow read. So far, slightly terrified for this TBR, I'm not going to lie. So this is Painted to the King and it's by Amy Sackville. So this has been out for several years. This is way back on my backlist. It's a lovely white cream book without its cover on, and it's set in 1622. So it's following a 23-year-old painter who is summoned to the palace. He sets up an easel and begins to paint what he sees. It's set in Madrid, and I think it is an account of him and whatever King Philip IV of Spain. Gosh, King Philip IV, that doesn't really have a ring to it. So it's about this painting, and I have a feeling the entire story is just going to be like the duration of the paint? What do you call that? The painting of him making the painting. So I think the duration of this story is basically set over the time it takes the painter to paint the painting. I'm gonna have to double check and rewatch some of my own videos because I can't remember if I've already picked this one. So if I have, then that means it's a priority book, so it needs to be book numero uno out of my TBR that I pick up and read. I am hoping that I get into this one and actually just really like it because I loved the premise of it, but because it's been on my TBR for several years now, I'm terrified of it. I'm intimidated by this book and I'm scared it's going to take me forever. But I do love the cover, so we'll see what happens with this one. Right, this is onto the sequels jar. I'm really excited about this one. I'm really, like, I know that A Clash of Kings is in here, and if I pull that out, it's just going to, like, derail me. But let's just hope it's something else, because there's so many series that I need to finish. We'll continue. Okay, so I've actually just pulled out a massive book. I was saying I'm scared of A Clash of Kings, but I pulled out one that I'm pretty sure is of equal length. So that's The Blinding Knife, which is the sequel to The Black Prison by Brent Weeks. I'm like sweating bullets. I'm like a little bit worried about the feasibility of this. Freaks me out when there's like a lot of adult non-fiction or historical fiction, because I'm a child and I like to read YA fantasy. Okay, so this is The Blinding Knife, and it's this big. It's a big boy. It's a big chunky boy. It's one of those books that's already curved its own spine just from sitting there. Now, I read the first book on audiobook and really enjoyed this series. Like, I think it is phenomenal, and don't get me wrong, I'm super excited to read this, but I was planning on holding off and reading this in August when the Tome Topple Readathon happens, because this would definitely qualify, but there are plenty of other huge books on my TBR, so I don't think I'm going to stress too much. I am really curious to see how I go reading this in physical format, because when I read it on audiobook, as much as I loved it, it was just a little bit too dense, and when I was driving and busy doing things, I found it really hard to concentrate. So I'm hoping that it'll be easier to actually just sit down and dedicate my focus and attention to this solely with no other activities going on. So this book is just shy of 800 pages, so it's huge. I think this will just be a see how we go, and if it takes me several months to read, then that's okay. We'll just have it on the side. The premise of this series is it is a magical epic fantasy, so think castles and magic, except the magic system works on the light spectrum, so people can control different colors on the light spectrum, and the more colors you can control, the more powerful you are. So most people can control one color, whether it's red, blue, or green, and they all do different things. A few people can do two. I think it's super rare if you have three, and then basically the Emperor is called the Black Prism because they have control over all of the colors and are super powerful. So it's really interesting, and it's super cool and thorough, and it has some great characters. And it left off on quite an interesting cliffhanger on the previous book. So yeah, I'm terrified, but I'm also really excited to continue this series. I just hope I actually get around to picking this up, because I think I'll be a bit disappointed if I don't, you know, break its back. Not literally, we're not breaking any spines, but metaphorically break its back and get into the story. Okay, so that leaves me to my backlist, so I'm kind of like a little bit terrified, but let's hope that I pull out some YA fantasy to cleanse the palate. I swear to God if I pull out Charles Dickens. Oh, that's quite exciting. Okay, my God, the fear of God was in me. So this is what I pulled out. The Dollmaker of Krakow. Krakow. This is the book, so I've got this beautiful hardback edition of it. I've had this on my TBR for ages, and I've really been wanting to pick it up because it is absolutely gorgeous. On the back it says, "There is war, there is pain, but there is magic and there is hope." And I am so excited to read this. I don't know why I haven't picked it up sooner, because I've genuinely been anticipating reading this for a really long time. So this is the blurb for this one, because it is lesser known, so I shall enlighten you as to what this book is about. Krakow, Poland, 1939. That's the beginning of World War II, if you didn't know. Magic brings a little doll named Karolina to life in a toy shop. She becomes friends with the gentle, broken-hearted dollmaker who owns the shop. When the darkness of the Nazi occupation sweeps over the city, Carolina and the dollmaker must use their magic to save their Jewish friends from a terrible danger, no matter what the risks. Weaving together magic, folklore, and history, this timeless story is about finding hope and friendship in the darkest of places. I just think this sounds really sweet. I'm pretty sure this is middle grade fiction, so it should be pretty light to read, and I am quite excited about this. I have actually been thinking to myself how much I want to read like some historical fiction set during the war. I just go through phases where I need my World War II fix. So we've got some very different historical eras being covered in this TBR. So on to our final pick. God knows what I'm gonna pull out. That's a really tiny book. So I've pulled out another historical fiction. This is gonna be a really interesting month of reading. This is what I've pulled out. So it's The Black Arrow. Oh my god, what is it with me and picking out Robert Louis Stevenson? I feel like the TBR gods have said, Kirsty, that is enough. You need to actually read your books by this man. So I picked out Treasure Island for June. That is written by Robert Louis Stevenson. I have read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which is written by him, as well as The Bottled Imp, which is like a super short story by him. And apparently, like after I finished Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I loved that so much that I bought these other two books. So this is The Black Arrow by him. It's a tiny book and it is set during the 15th century in England, which is the War of the Roses. Now, I have never read anything about the War of the Roses. I don't understand what it is. I've never got a grasp of the history. It's never been taught to me. It's just something that's not covered in the Australian education system, and it's not something that I've ever come across in any other way. I've never watched anything about it, so I'm actually really quite excited to read this and hope that I might come out of this very short book at the end of it and have some idea about what the heck that war was about. So I am curious to read this. It's nice, big fun. I'm just a little bit like scared for my soul because there is so much historical fiction on this TBR. So that brings me to the end of my TBR. This was not at all the lineup that I was expecting to get, but here we are. So let me know in the comments down below which ones you are most excited for. I'm really curious if I actually got through and read all of this, which one I'm going to enjoy the most. So we've got some YA fantasy, a retelling of Sleeping Beauty. We've got some what could now be considered historical fiction, but I think is meant more of a contemporary set during the war in Afghanistan, which will be very topical and interesting. Then we've got one set in the 17th century in Madrid, Spain, and I will hopefully learn a few things because I don't know about anything about Spanish history. Then we're into some really hard-hitting fantasy in the Black Prism series, which I am excited to be continuing, followed by dipping my toe into some World War II historical fiction and finishing it off back in the 15th century with The War of the Roses. So my god, let's all just pray that I don't go insane from historical fiction overload, but that's okay. We'll see which ones we get around to reading. So let me know in the comments down below how you think I'm going to go and which era you would pick if you had to pick one of these histories out of my TBR. I'd like to know what all of your favourites would be. So other than that, I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.